they would be somewhat elongated.
Hey James, what's your definition of love?
Well, to quote my favourite book, it's the willingness to nurture another's spiritual growth.
Well, I think it's when you care about someone else's happiness more than your own.
So that was a short clip there from Apart Together, written and directed by Lachlan Walker. Yes! So I guess you guys wrapped shooting like last month?
Yeah, I think our last shoot day was, off the top of my head, it was like around the 18th of December, something like that. Yeah.
Cool, man. And I feel like by the time this episode comes out, it'll be around the time that you're hoping to release it, right?
That seems really soon.
Okay.
So maybe not yet.
This will come out in February-ish.
Yeah. But I mean, it might take me, I don't know. I would like to get it out as soon as possible. But yeah, because a lot of it's a new process for me. I'm not certain,
I understand.
like how long certain things will take. So yeah.
Well, congrats nonetheless, man.
Thank you, man. We should say we're recording this start of January 2024. So in that, just to give time perspective to people. Yeah. Thanks, man. Yeah. It's funny, even though we finished shooting, I thought I'd relax a lot, but I haven't really because now I want to get it all edited, assembly cut, make sure that we have everything we need, even though I'm pretty sure we do, you know what I mean, just to see it, to feel good, like there weren't any camera issues or sound issues or anything like that. Yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Exciting, man. So without giving anything away, what's the film about?
I feel like I need to work on that, even like the short log line summary kind of thing.
Okay.
Great question, and I should be able to answer it well, I hope, but I might be a little bit verbose at the moment. I think it's a romance drama, and I hope that it just explores perhaps like different ways you can be caring and thoughtful for your partner. Yeah. That actually makes me think of a quote from Cillian Murphy. It was in one of those actors roundtable discussions, and he said, "I don't think it's the duty of art to give you the answers. It's just to ask the questions." And I really liked that. And I think in the film, I kind of want it to maybe ask questions like that, like what is the most thoughtful thing you can do for your partner in certain situations? What's the right way to act? Yeah.
It reminds me of, like when This Is America came out, people started asking like Childish Gambino, like, what's it about? And he very much resisted saying what it was about. And I really respect that choice.
Yeah.
Because it is pretty abstract, and I feel like the audience can take away from it whatever they like.
Yeah.
So maybe it's fine that you don't have a straight ahead answer. I know that you've been talking about this film for quite a while, and I know that when we started talking about like what is it about, that you wanted it to kind of appeal to a lot of people, that lots of people have had love stories in their lives, and hopefully they can find something within this film that's relatable and specific to them as well. Yeah,
exactly. If it makes people feel something, that's a success to me.
Right.
Yeah. Although that even said, like, I think you just have to make art and film in that because you believe in it and not to appeal to anyone, or I don't think you could like maintain the proper vision, like the pure essence of whatever it is, if I'm concerned about how people perceive it or what kind of effect it will have on people. So I've just tried to make something maybe that I feel something with, and in the belief that other people will probably feel similar to me about certain things, but then at the same time, I'm having that openness so that you can impose your own views and takes on things, and it's not necessarily fully clear exactly the way, what does someone mean when they say that thing, why did they do that thing, for you to have your own interpretation of that.
And one of the things we talked about is like being on the nose with certain concepts. It's like you want to respect the audience's intelligence and allow them to come to their own conclusions. And in a certain sense, I don't think the audience wants to be told what the story is. Wants to be guided through maybe a beginning, middle, and end. It's annoying if there isn't a narrative structure, but beyond that, being too outlining what you're wanting to say too strongly is maybe a trap. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah, I think that's exactly. I know you don't like balance, but I feel like it's a bit of an art form, at least, to not be too abstract. In that no one knows, or a lot of people have no idea what's going on. It's too vague, but then not being the other way around either, and it's just being blatant and on the nose. So it's a fun line to walk. Also, what you said before reminded me of another quote from also the same roundtable discussion, where Alexander Payne, a director, said, the more specific something is, the more universal it is.
Yep. Leibniz said, in the particular is contained the universal.
Cool.
Yeah.
So I love that because while we're making the film, I was thinking that like this is really specific, and like I'm being very particular here about how this thing needs to go. And I'm glad I did that. Because I think like they're saying, that's even though you might think this is very few people would have experienced this. I think when it's specific enough, you can relate it to something similar maybe, or we'll see. It's also funny talking about this now while I'm very early in post-production. I feel like I'll have better things to say when we've gone through.
You'll have different things to say. I don't know about better. But I think this is it's interesting to be in it and be talking about it. Because very frequently we hear from directors where it's kind of done.
That's true.
So you have a unique voice and talking about as a first time writer director.
I feel more exposed as well, being in the middle of it.
I suppose. Because
when you've finished it, I guess you know what to expect. You can speak with more confidence about, I don't know, the product, I guess. But I do like that. This unique moment right now. So.
We don't have to talk about the product. It's more about your experience. We can talk about whatever you'd like, but
mate, I'm happy to be vulnerable. We can talk about whatever we're feeling.
What you mentioned before reminded me of, I can't remember who this was, might have been Todd Phillips, but a director saying that one trap to fall into is that you begin to think about what everybody else likes, because you can't ever be sure of that. You can only be sure of what you like. But the beauty is that because we're all having a shared experience around life, human life, what you like is likely going to resonate with somebody, with a lot of people maybe. Whereas if you try and create something that abstractly appeals to everybody, you're more likely to miss the mark, unless you're Michael Bay.
And even surely he does things he likes, right?
It's true.
That's kind of how I've made all my content on YouTube, and even this podcast. Is I think it's valuable, and something about it is exciting and interesting. So I'm glad I've lived like that, as opposed to trying to do things to appeal to, even like in quotes, like the intelligent way to do things, like marketing and growing audience and things like that. I've not really ever it's probably terrible advice for most people, but I've not really ever angled things like that. But yeah, it's interesting though, because a lot of my audience, I very rarely get negative comments. It's very often just positive, like good vibes. I don't know, and I feel like maybe that's because people can sense that you're just like being authentic and not trying to pull people in like a trickster kind of way, you know.
Yes.
And not trying to make something that maybe you don't fully agree with just because you think more people are going to be exposed to it. Yeah, maybe that's why. But no doubt, as things grow, there'll be trolls and that's okay.
Yeah, Joe Rogan comes to mind as somebody who he started a podcast when it was like ridiculous to start. No one was doing that, and I'm sure a lot of people questioned him, and even now he doesn't look at comments or anything. It's just very clear that he's doing exactly what he wants to do. I feel it's very attractive to just go that way.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
I feel like it may be a harder path because there's a
Maybe
lot of
initially.
temptations along the way. Yeah. I think the more you do it, the more easy it is to continue. But at first, and even when you have a bit of success, probably there'll be temptations to do this to grow faster or do that to get paid or whatever. But ultimately I think it's the right way to go about it.
It depends on what you mean by difficult though, because I feel like for certain people it's more difficult to go against what you feel is to be authentically true. Like I can't really imagine Tarantino doing Transformers or something like that.
Yeah.
He seems to have done what he wanted to do from day dot, and I think it would have been difficult for him to go against his very strong internal voice.
Transformers is awesome, man.
I should say Michael Bay movies are fine. And I have heard that, I have not from his mouth, but from one of his, I think it was a friend of his or something, that I think he's also done very weird films, like ones that people haven't heard of.
Yeah.
But in addition to that he finds that there is a certain art in creating something that appeals to a mass audience, which I think is true. I remember when I was when I was in law school, I felt that I started to lose my voice because you're very much encouraged to write in a certain way. So in order to counteract that, I started taking poetry classes. And funnily enough, my poetry teacher was a former lawyer, so he totally got it. And in the beginning, I started writing poetry in a very like avant-garde, my own way, not much structure around it. And he kind of had said to me, he really convinced me that he's like, maybe you should write a sonnet and just cut your teeth writing sonnets because there's something in that. And he basically said, look, the sonnet or the haiku or these like poetic structures that have survived for a long time, it must be that they say that they call to us deeply. Otherwise they would have been forgotten, you know, unless sonnets spoke to something deep within us, nobody would be writing sonnets. And so he had this idea that if you follow these ancient structures that have been filtered through a process of through a time, you know, of several millennia, you're likely to find something that kind of resonates with us very deeply. And if you think about things like iambic pentameter, that kind of rhythm, maybe it's that there are certain dance rhythms that make us just want to move and dance. So maybe there's something within us as humans that kind of moves us at a subconscious level that then becomes kind of distilled in certain, could be narrative structures or rhythmic structures or poetic structures. And learning to, I think, construct or express or communicate an idea within those frameworks, I find is very useful. Because within poetry, right, like especially if you've got like iambic pentameter and then couplets, you've got a rhyme scheme as well. You have to be very clear about what exactly you want to say.
Do you want to clarify for everyone those two?
So it's so iambic pentameter from memory means that every line has 10 syllables, and then a sonnet has a rhyme scheme of A, B, A, I think. So like the last word of the first line will rhyme with the last word of the third line. the last word of the second line will rhyme with the last word of the fourth line, and so on. And then it ends with a couplet where the last words of the last two lines rhyme. It's not very important. The main thing is that if you've got this incredibly strict and rigid imposed structure, then very quickly you find, well, what is this poem about? Like, what words am I willing to lose? And what words am I willing to not lose? What ideas am I willing to lose? What ideas am I willing to not lose? So there's this kind of interplay between the structure of the poem and then what you would like to say. And I find that it's funny how, like, you're pressed to be more creative when there are constraints.
Yeah. You have to distill. Yeah. I guess that's the same with creating any art, hey?
Exactly.
It's like distilling a feeling into a medium. Yeah, that's where the skill and taste comes in.
Yeah, and I think it was Christopher Nolan talking about how, like, a film is really like an interplay between, like, the vision that you had in your head and then what's actually possible, like the way that it actually manifests.
Yeah.
Is that something that you experienced during creating your film?
Yeah, definitely. Because I tried to write it not worrying about reality at all. So I think some writers would be thinking, especially if you were writing it thinking you were going to create this, you might think, okay, they could be at an airport, but let's put them in a park because that's easier to film. Do you know what I mean? So I tried to not let that influence me at all. I instead tried to think, where is like the most interesting location for this scene and what happens in that scene, and not just really not restrict myself in any way. So because I thought that would be like the most true to the core of whatever I'm trying to express. And then as we got into production, that's when I started to depending on what locations we could lock in and maybe how many extras we could manage, or all those kind of like smaller details. I really did try to be idealistic though, and because I think a lot of people, not just like in the crew, but like in the world that you're dealing with, would try to tell me reality, you know?
Yeah.
And I would resist. One example was like we had an airport scene, and so I tried to go to Sydney Airport, which was very difficult. You know, they're very busy, and they've all got all these requirements. And anyway, in the end, it just didn't seem like it was going to work with them. Then there were some other options who either just completely discarded the idea. Like a lot of car parks. No car park would let us film in their car park, which really surprised me because I thought, what's the big deal? But, you know, they just wouldn't even want to hear anything. They're like, no, straight away. And then some places were just very expensive, and where it was clearly not really worth it to spend so much of the budget on one location, you know. But in the end, with like a lot of back and forth, we got an incredible location, and it was just perfect. And I think that happens a lot in so many different areas where, I guess there's a vision that I want to hit with, if it's a location, if it's a prop, if it's like the way the actor delivers something or whatever it is. And I think that's where like the part of the relentlessness comes in. Nick and I were talking about it before, and Ridley Scott says that if you want to be a director, you need inordinate stamina. And I think I felt like that so often, like, this is crazy, you know, like working like whole days on every little thing, and insisting upon, certainly there are little areas where I would relent and say, okay, that's okay, that solution is good, but for a lot of things it was that's not no, we need this, you know, we can't settle for that. So I think that's probably the reality of things, you know, like location availabilities, like prop availabilities, and then whatever else it is. And there were times when like another example would be one of the final shoot days we shot everything, and then we had about a month and a half break, and then we shot 3 more days, and that was just because of the director of photography's availability. He was booked on another feature film in between them. We were trying to get it all done before that, but the way, based on everyone else's availabilities and the days we could shoot, it didn't become possible to do that. And after it happened, I'm kind of glad. It was nice to have a bit of a break between. Like it was good and it was bad, but I'll take the positives in that I had a chance to edit everything we'd shot and see any areas that needed pickups or needed to be redone. Anyway, so when we were planning those final 3 days, we had still quite a few locations to shoot, and going to a different location on the same day is difficult because you have to have the whole crew pack up again, and then everyone has to make their way across to the next location and then set up again. And that all takes quite a bit of time, and like time is your number one asset on the shoot days because there's never enough, you know. And anyway, so on our last day we did 4 moves, which is pretty massive for a single day. I think the norm is like you don't move; it's just one location
per day.
Yeah,
one location per day.
Yeah, and then I mean, it depends on the scale of the thing, but probably the same location multiple days.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know what I mean, yeah.
Wow.
Anyway, but so I was working with the assistant director on the schedule beforehand, and he was saying like, we got to cut something. We can't do this. You know, like it's too much. It's like we don't have enough time for all that. And he was like, this scene, we shot this scene previously, and there was a little problem with the camera, like something flapped into the frame, and I later had a different idea to how to finish the performance of the actor. And I thought it was a really important scene. It was really good how it was already shot, but it could have been a little bit better. And also what was already shot could have been worked around with cutting to different angles in between. But I really think it's important to keep it on that single angle in terms of being in the moment with the character. And so the assistant director was saying, like what you've already got, it's good. You can cut around that and it can make it work. And I had to insist, like, I hear what you're saying, but no, we need to do that again. Anyway, so, and then he was getting frustrated at me, I think, thinking I was being stubborn, but I just know that I know what we need, to see the vision, and I got to defend that. Anyway, and so we had like an hour, well, there were many days back and forth, and then we had an hour-long phone call where we were basically like, we're not going to hang up until we figure this out, and in that case, there was a scene that was meant to be at like the front door of a character's house, and like when I thought about it more, I thought, it doesn't have to be at a front door. Like as long as this action happens, it could be somewhere else. And then we realized, well, we're going to be in that area. If we make that scene happen in a car, we could do that scene in that same location. So that was great. We did that. Anyway, and we also did something similar. They were meant to be in a supermarket, but again, to avoid having to travel to a supermarket, we changed that setting to a different location nearby, which again worked out brilliantly, because the action was what we needed, and it didn't have to be in a supermarket. I'm being a little bit vague here because I don't really want to give away the story at the moment.
It's fine.
But yeah, that was cool because I felt like that was creative problem solving, where I wasn't just compromising and saying, oh, okay, just cut the scene, or don't reshoot that other scene which wasn't quite where I want it to be. But it takes like, it does take stamina, right? Not to just be like, all right then, in so many ways, and there's infinite possibilities. We had those 3 days, and because I'm respecting everyone and in their time and that, and I know like every shoot day is like it's like it just requires a lot of them, a whole day. So to try to add another one would be not ideal in a lot of ways. So, because that's, there's always options. We shoot it again. We shoot that on a different day. We'll do that, whatever. But just trying to optimize all that for everyone, but ultimately I think for the film, like to make it the best we can make it. Yeah.
Nice, man. Yeah, I've definitely one of the things that I'm inspired about being around you is your stamina. Like not just in films, but everything. You know, you just seem to be on the go,
Cool.
doing stuff. In that case, though, I mean, it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong about this, that stamina, in order to have that kind of persistence, you need to be driven by some sort of compelling purpose. So, was there something desperately that you wanted to say with the film, or what was behind the persistence?
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think I'd be. Well, I wouldn't want to be that persistent if I didn't really care about the thing, right? I think I could be that persistent, but it just wouldn't make sense, right? Like, why would you work so hard at something if you didn't really care about it?
Yep.
Yeah. I think I'm just thinking about this now as you've asked me, but I love to just jump into something with like everything I've got.
Yeah.
I find that really exciting.
Yeah.
And so I've done that previously with like the Stronger series. Just like that just dominated my life. And I think it was worth it. Yeah, so I think it's the same thing here. I honestly, I probably think creating this film is currently the most valuable thing I can do, the most fulfilling thing I can do. So I'm going to do that the best I can. You know, I mean, I could have spent more money on it, but it's all a balance, you know, like I don't want to be stupid and reckless and like put everything into it and then regret maybe having spent too much money. So, and I also think like where it's at is fantastic. Like spending more money would be very marginal improvements, if you know what I mean, and possibly not even noticeable to the layman. So probably that, like if I'm committing myself to this thing, then why not why not like give it a unreasonable amount of effort. I also feel like I could because I was still balancing my work and other commitments. I could have possibly cancelled all of that, but that, you know, it's all a balance where that'd be too it wouldn't be necessary either, I don't think. So
it's sometimes useful to have a reprieve where you're working on something else for a little while.
Yeah, definitely.
Sometimes adding things does have a synergistic effect and almost like a relaxing effect sometimes.
Yeah.
Going away and doing something else. Active recovery.
Yeah. Like training, as an example.
Yeah.
I agree. I think if I was 100% on the film, well, I think that would have been just frustrating, mostly because I didn't really expect the cast and crew to be 100% full-time on it because, like, you know, volunteer kind of thing. So it doesn't seem realistic to think someone will volunteer and then also do it full-time, right? And so then I think maybe I would have gotten frustrated waiting for, you know, if you have more time and you ask someone for something, then if a day goes by, you're like, where the hell is it? But if you've been very busy, a day might go by and you'll be like, oh yeah, like that's okay, they'll get it to me soon, sort of thing.
Yeah, that kind of lifestyle diversification, I think, is important.
Yeah, I think so. Except if it's Nick in the podcast and he doesn't send me something right away, like, where the hell is it, mate?
That's inaccurate.
No, Nick's very good. You'll get the stuff right. It's impressive, man. Yeah.
So I'm curious, man. So take us back, like we're kind of, what we're talking about now is kind of like in the process of making the film. Take us back before that. So maybe to the writing stage, or even before that, if there is something before the writing.
Yeah. From memory, I think around 2017, 2018.
Wow.
I probably would have had this like sort of idea for a story. And I'm thinking, how vulnerable do I want to be here? And the answer should be
No, the answer is whatever.
Yeah, well, back in 2017, 2018, I had a idea for a story, but I've never made a film before. The closest thing I've done is make YouTube videos about my training, which I think gradually became more of a story. You know, not just me training, but I tried to...
Definitely.
You noticed that?
Yeah, because like the first thing that came to mind was just around there being endpoints and goals.
Yeah.
Because then there's a built-in ending.
Yeah.
It sets up a narrative structure automatically.
Yeah.
And then you would showcase the goals. So definitely beginning, middle, and end.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I love how organic that is, because
yes,
all the videos started from me just loving gymnastics and strength and having an urge to like document it and then share it with people. And then from there it kind of, I was, like learning more techniques of editing and filming and how to make things look better and present them in a more interesting, more succinct manner, so anyway, I guess I've just naturally been interested in that sort of thing. Then I had this story idea, and I guess it was just an idea for a while, and maybe like some ideas you let them linger, and then if they keep coming back and you keep feeling like this is good, then at a certain point you feel compelled to take more action on that. So I think also at the time when I had this story idea, I was working on Stronger 2, because it took me about a year to edit it. So I think I would have been thinking, get Stronger 2 finished, that's the primary goal. And then, but this was kind of in the background. And then, being the idealist I am, I thought of who would I really want to, because I know I don't know a lot, right? I just have this idea. I've never made a film before, but I know that I really like Wong Fu. It's also a romance drama, and Wong Fu Productions, that's a YouTube channel. They make romance drama shorts and all that kind of content, and they do it I really enjoy their shorts. So I thought, these guys, it'd be incredible. Like if I could have anything, I would want these guys to make this film, and then, as is my way of being, and I encourage everyone to be like this, I thought, well then let's try and make that happen, because I know it's ridiculous, like this guy with no like prior experience approaching like pretty well established people to try and make a film or a short film, but do it anyway, like what's the worst that's going to happen? So I tried to so basically I just had like the premise in my head of the film, and then I think I emailed them, or like I just went online and tried to find out how to contact them, and whatever that method was, I think it was like an email and like an Instagram DM and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think I heard anything. I didn't hear anything from any of those channels. So then I was going to the US. I think I was going for Burning Man. Yeah, I was there for some reason. Anyway, and these guys are based in California. So, and I don't know if this is unbecoming or whatever you want to say, but one of the directors, the main guys from Wong Fu, like he has a cafe, and I just knew about that by just like loosely following him. And I checked out that cafe on like Google Maps, and I could see in the reviews like some people were like, oh, great boba, and even Phil was there to say hello. And so I was like, whoa, like there's a chance that he might be there, so I'm going to go and check out his cafe, and on the off chance that he's there, then that way I can meet him. So when I was, and that was cool, on that trip I was very excited for that aspect. It was a good trip with all kinds of other, like seeing friends and doing things, but it was fun to couple that into it as well. And so when I had the time, I think I allocated 2 days of that trip to doing this specifically, because I was with my other friends. So, and they have the things they want to do together, so I would go and do those things with them. but I'm glad I did that, where I gave myself 2 days with nothing but this. And so the first day, it's a good thing I did it, because the first day I was like, all right, I could go to the cafe right now, but what am I going to even say to the guy? And then I thought, I better write a scene at least, because then I can give him the scene and show him a bit of a taste. So then I quickly learned how to do the script formatting, you know, like the indented dialogue and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's very basic, but obviously you should present it in the correct format. So I did that, and I just quickly wrote a scene, and then I went to like the Staples or whatever it is and printed it off. And yeah, it was so last minute. And then I was like, okay, tomorrow, like I'm going to give myself the rest of the day just to think about ideas and, questions I might want to ask him, or ways I want to like pitch him. And then tomorrow I'm going to go to the cafe. So, this kind of spent the time. It was nice to give myself the time just to do nothing but think about it, And then the next day I go to the cafe, which took me about 3 hours to get there by public transport. And I'm really glad I did this, because I actually filmed before I walked in. I got off the bus and I could see the cafe, and my heart was pounding. It was really weird, like how much I was reacting to it. And I think that's when I'm going for something I really care about, and it's about to happen. And I guess I know, like, all right, you like, don't screw this up, because it's gonna happen, and you get one chance, Yes, and I'm glad I took the time to quickly vlog to myself that moment. And I think since that moment, I've been sort of tracking little milestones along the way of making this film, because I just thought that might be a cool journey to share later, of like going from pretty much a total amateur to hopefully making a good film. And because I guess a lot of the thing I want is to like encourage other people to do the same thing, do the things that excite you. Maybe they don't seem realistic, but if you work hard and like, are disciplined about it, I reckon you can do anything. So yeah, I did that. Then I walk into the cafe, and like the first thing I see is Phil sitting there like with his laptop. And I was like, oh my God, like how lucky am I, and then the person's asking me what order would I like, and I couldn't think. I couldn't think straight, man. I was like, what's good? And then she's like, this, da da da. I'm like, I'll get that. I just, it was hilarious. And then then I walked up to Phil, and he was busy, so he was like, oh, give me like just hang on, man. I'm just going to get through this email or whatever. I was like, no worries. And then I look around the cafe, and all the seats are taken except for the one right next to Phil. So it was awkward, but I sat down right next to him because I didn't want to put that pressure on him, but there was no other place to sit. So I just sat there drinking the boba and like, feeling a little bit awkward. And then when Phil finished whatever he was doing, he closed his laptop and he turned to me, which I thought was really respectful of him.
Charismatic.
Like, yeah, it was like us putting our phones on flight mode.
Yeah.
He gave me his full attention. It was really nice, and it made an impression on me. That little thing, like I just thought he's a genuine dude, Yeah. So then I quickly spoke with him, and he was like, "Oh yeah, great. Well, like send me the script and I'll have a look." And obviously I was like, oh, I don't have a script, but I've got this scene. And so I was like, it's just as well I did that, because otherwise I would have looked completely unprepared. And so I gave him the scene, and as I gave him the scene, I realized, oh, wait a second, like there's no way for you to contact me. So then I quickly like penned in my email on the bottom of it. And he said, oh, I'll take a look, and if it's something we can do, then I'll get back to you. And so I was just stoked with that. Like that was awesome. Anyway, and then that was that, and I left, and it was a classic thing of I left, and then I had so many, I should have said this, I could have told him about that, I could have asked him this, even though I'd spent the day before kind of thinking about it. I don't know, sadly, until it actually happened, I didn't, have all the ideas. And then I went to Burning Man for like, that runs about a week and a half, but all up about 2 weeks of like traveling and, preparing for it. And during Burning Man, it was cool. Like I enjoyed having that as time to reflect and think about the film as well, and talk to people about the idea. And yeah, during that, the idea dawned on me that like, if I don't hear from him, there's nothing wrong with like going to find him again and like just saying like, what did you think? You know, like it felt a little bit, I guess, persistent, but I think if you don't do it in a rude way, there's nothing wrong with it, you know. So after Burning Man, I went back again to the cafe, and he wasn't there, sadly, and I thought, oh well, that's the more likely reality of this thing. And I looked at his Instagram and I could see he was actually away traveling with his girlfriend, and I was like, damn it, you know. And then a few days later, I noticed he posted on his Instagram like, back to the grind or whatever. So I was like, sweet, he's back. So then I went back to the cafe and he was there again. And so I thought, I am so freaking lucky, you know? And so it was really good to see him a second time. Like, firstly, I could say all those things I'd thought of in between. Secondly, he recognized me. He's like, oh, hey, the Australian guy, how's Burning Man? You know, so it was cool that he remembered these little things. And then I could ask, and what I asked him was, and this is, I shouldn't take credit, like I spoke to a few people, and my good mate, I think, suggested I ask him this, like, what is it that I can do that'll give me the best chance of making this film with you? Because I think that's a great question where they have to think about it, and you know, it gives you a really, I guess, from their perspective, your best course of action to make this thing. You know? So that was great, and his advice there was, well, you got to write a script, man. You know, like, get that done, send that to me, we'll see. So that was cool, because I think I was like, damn it, that's a lot of work. You know, like, for some reason I was hoping like, this idea is so good that you guys can write it, because you guys are great at writing, you know.
Okay.
You get me?
Yeah.
You know, like I was. It's ridiculous saying it. Although always go for the ridiculous thing, guys. But I was thinking like, if this idea is so compelling, then one of their guys can write it. Whoever normally writes it, you know, one of their guys can direct it. And I guess I'll co-direct or direct with them. You know, and just work as a team to get this to fruition. Anyway, so but he told me to write the script, and then his other best piece of advice was treat your team well.
Yeah. And
I really liked that. Like, he was very clear on that. It was like his top recommendation, and I maintained that as best I could throughout the whole process. We can talk more about that later, because it was hard to do it in some instances, and because I realized like treating the team well, it's not always like an obvious thing, you know, like anyway, like there's a lot to that, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And it's a tricky balance sometimes, because you got to push people when you feel like you need to, which naturally you think, oh, the person's not going to like that, but then you got to think, but the film's going to be better ultimately, and that's, right now they may not like it, but when it's done they will be glad, you know. Anyway, so we can talk about that more later, but great advice, thank you, Phil. It was incredible. Anyway, and so that was an elongated story as to sort of how then I went back to Australia after, and there was on my list, all right, I've got to write this script. Yeah, and as never having written before, I guess it was daunting, you know, and it's cool. I'm now thankful for having done English at school, and like, you know, I did high level English in IB actually. So it's funny, at school I never enjoyed English. Like, I just thought, oh, this is lame, who cares? And even in year 12 I was like, I don't agree with this at all, but I know what you guys want to hear about my analysis of this film or book, so I'll write it how you want, and got pretty good marks. But it's not like I actually believed it.
Yes.
But the cool thing was, at this point I was like, oh, this is sweet. Like, I know how to express that.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Okay.
It was really cool. And so I was very thankful to have had that.
Wow.
Yeah. Definitely more so than if I'd never been exposed to any of this, you know, and then trying to express something would be a lot more difficult. Yeah. Then I just it was kind of in the, because I have a lot of other, like everyone, you don't just stop everything you're doing to do this small thing. So I think I was just trying to, like 10 minutes a day of writing or 30 minutes a day of writing was kind of how I was trying to approach it. So just gradually chipping away at writing the script. And it was awesome because I hope I've got the first draft, because it must have sucked. You know what I mean? Like the rough idea is there, but it would have been on the nose everywhere. Like this, like everything, the more you practice something, the more you learn about. I think it's important you keep your originality, but there's obviously certain techniques you can use that improve things. Because even that's interesting. Like art is subjective, but I think there's obviously like a lot of it's a skill, and you apply skills to make it more impactful. I won't say better because it's subjective, but maybe, you know what I mean? Like, I guess in that sense, I think COVID was a blessing for me as well, because what that hit in 2020, and so like I'd been sort of doing that 30 minutes a day or whatever for 2019, say, and then 2020 I was like, well, I got a lot more time now, it's perfect to write. So then I could really give even more focus. I was like, I cannot let this opportunity of these lockdowns go by without finishing this script. Like that would be crazy. So it was really good for that. And then in that process there was just a lot of when I think it's at a good spot, then I'll reach out to. It was very daunting, man, this whole thing, like being totally new to the space. I was like, okay, I think this script is pretty good. Now I want someone with experience to check it out and tell me what they think. But the thing is, I'm like, I don't even know who to ask, Yes. Like I don't know any script. I don't know any screenwriters.
Yeah.
At that point, I didn't even know what a screenwriter was, really. You know what I mean? And I feel like with the world, there's a lot of like sharks, as in like people that will take your money to give you the service, but may not be either that good at it or not like purely aligned. Do you know what I mean? Okay. As in like, let's give an example of a personal trainer that if they're just trying to get tons of work, they'll take on anyone and give them maybe like a generic program. Whereas I was looking for that personal trainer that really cared about my physique and where I was at and knew how to get me where I need to be. But when you're like totally new to the space, you can't really assess their skill. Do you know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah. So that was hard, and I just had to take a chance on some people to think like, I hope, look, that all looks pretty good, like their resume looks all right. Okay. But now that I've been through it, I certainly could much more confidently and like accurately choose people, you know what I mean? Like and it was cool. It went in that direction where I had someone, she was like she'd written some episodes, I think, of Home and Away, which is like an Australian, I don't know, what do you call it? Serial TV show? I don't know. Anyway, yeah. But even now, I question like that. I don't know if that's the best person to have do this, because I've never really watched Home and Away, so I have no idea what. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe their dialogue I don't quite like, or their structure, and hence it's not a great idea to get advice in that field. But anyway, it was definitely better than nothing, especially where I was at. So she gave me some comments and ideas, and I sort of applied them, and then I think I just talked to different friends about it. I spoke to Nick, but I spoke to Nick later in the piece, and his advice was phenomenal, man. I really appreciate it. Do you remember anything of what you told me back then?
Well, I remember we were trying to come up with a tagline. I think that was while I was in America or something. And that took some... It was interesting because it was like a distillation process of trying to figure out what the movie's all about. Yeah. But then later, like more recently, going through like some of the things that you've shot and then trying to, again, cut and see whether or not this is important for the narrative or... Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember anything in particular that we talked about, but it was. I think it was just like being faithful to the story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I gave you the script to read, did I?
No.
No, yeah, okay. So some people I would do scenes with, but with Nick, I think we just spoke about, more general things. One of the massive things that Nick gifted me, which was awesome, was, and because Nick's got a lot of experience writing research papers, and I love the fact that it seems completely different, but actually it has a lot of similarities. Like, it's still writing. So that was like, I've had these epiphanies all over the place where like skills you have in one area, they carry over really well into some completely different area. So it's another exciting thing about do things, challenge yourself, make yourself uncomfortable, do what feels right to you and authentic, because I feel like somehow all these skills will come together in those areas that you're really well suited to with your interests and all that. And the advice Nick gave was, you said like what I do with my papers is once I've written it out quite, and revised it quite a lot, I just open like a new page and start from scratch and write the whole thing again. And that way you might forget little things, but they were clearly not that important. And because you already know going into it what matters and how this is roughly going to go. And so it was very cool because Nick told me that. He didn't say do that, but he said this is what I do with my papers. Do you do that all the time or just most of the time? Or? Hope you don't mind me giving out a little secret, by the way.
I mean, I don't think it's a secret. It's funny because it's onerous. Like, I mean, how many people are actually going to do that? I mean, starting again from scratch. It's a little bit... I do it often. I would say that I actually probably do it with... I've probably done it with all of my research papers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Respect. Yeah, well, that's the thing. So Nick didn't say do this. He just said I do this. And that's a beautiful thing about discipline, hey? Because I think my first reaction was like, that's daunting and that's a lot of work, and is that even necessary? And then after a couple of days I thought, well, like I've got to explore that option and try it and see. And it was awesome, man. Like I gave myself about 5 days, I think, for that. And yeah, it was what I did. I don't know if you did this as well. I wrote out the whole script again, and I had a lot of really cool ideas of how to tie things in, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Like 2 separate scenes before, I thought, oh wait, I can put them together in this way. You know? And so I definitely had ideas where I could tell that is better than what I had before. Yeah. And then there were some things that I omitted. I'm like, oh yeah, like that wasn't that important. But then what I did once I'd finished that was I then put the script side by side and went through each scene, and I looked at what elements of this do I like, what elements of this do I like, and I'd say probably 90% of it was the rewrite was perfect. But then maybe 10% I thought from what I'd written previously, I really like that dialogue, or I really like that idea, so I would copy that into the new one. Yeah, and that was cool. After that point, I felt pretty confident, like, this is pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, so, and along this whole way, I was just learning a lot about writing, I suppose, and narrative structure, and watching a lot of films. It's funny, in that moment when I was watching any dramas, I'd rewatch some of my favorites, like Itaewon Class on Netflix. Highly recommend it, guys. It's a Korean drama and it's incredible. Yeah, and as I was watching these, it's funny because my mind was very much in that space of noting, I guess at that point, screenwriting techniques, the way people talk or the way scenes flow, and what makes them interesting, and all that kind of thing, and then just keeping that in mind for some of my own scenes. Then I also had so I guess I spent that's about 3 or 4 years writing it. Yeah, it definitely could have been quicker, like if you're experienced. I think it was just hard I also didn't want to just write it and quickly make a bad film. Do you know what I mean? I wanted to and even that is subjective again, but I don't know, there's this vision in my head, and I just, as long as I meet that quality, I'm happy. So it's hard to express how I know that or what that is, but I think I just feel it. You know what I mean? yeah, so then again, I just in some of the scenes as well, I found what was really helpful with dialogue for me was to do the scene with the person. So I'd written, the characters are meeting and chatting or whatever it is. So let's say it was like a scene where they're just getting to know each other. So I wrote that out, but I did find it hard sitting in my room sometimes writing a conversation, because I'm just talking to myself, and I'm trying to make it realistic and interesting.
Were you verbalizing?
Mostly not.
Okay.
Yeah. But maybe after I'd written something, then I'd try it to myself.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, it was tricky. And what I found was really helpful with some scenes in particular was to then meet up with a friend. And again, even this was hard because being so new to it, I didn't have a bunch of actor friends that I could just call up and say, hey, do you want to do some scenes, So I was just figuring all this out as I was going. And it was very much a lot of to my brother, do you know anyone that does this kind of stuff? Oh, I know this girl, she might, I don't know. And then I called her and, oh yeah, we can talk about it. And then, so met up with her and then, yeah, in the moment said, hey, let's do this scene together. I'll play that guy, just to see how the scene goes. And I filmed that to see what it looked like. But the cool thing was it clearly just didn't quite feel, it felt a bit clunky. So then I said, all right, or she might have said, I can't remember, but let's do it again. But don't worry about the script. Let's just have that conversation naturally. And we did that and it was awesome because we got the same, we got from point A to point B and covered everything we needed to, but in a natural way. And I recorded it. So then after I got home, I wrote out what we'd said, and that worked really well because then now the dialogue was pretty natural. You know what I mean? And so I started doing that a little bit, especially if I got stuck on a scene where I'm I don't know how to get them to say this in a natural way, or how would that come up? So I did that, and it was really fun. Then I met up with another friend who I know did acting, and we just hung out and then did the scene, and it was cool. I enjoyed this whole process, especially when other people are involved. It kind of pretty fun. And then later in the production of the film, I actually did that with the actors, which was awesome, where maybe one scene they would not, I don't know about this, I don't know if I'd say that, or I don't know if I'd do that.
Uh-huh.
And then sometimes I would be yeah, I agree, we can change that. Or sometimes I'd be, no, that is very important.
Okay.
That's kind of his defining characteristic.
Okay.
But I also wouldn't be that's it and deal with it. It'd be, that's it and let's figure out how to get you to feel like that is reality, So it might have been tweaking other parts of the scene, or yeah, it was awesome that we really improved some scenes from where they were by making changes like that. And that was mostly in rehearsals. We did it once on a shoot day, which was hilarious because we were all ready to shoot this scene. It was in my bedroom, and the actors having a conversation on the bed, and this is not ideal at all. But Lachlan, the lead actor, says to me yeah, I don't know about this, man. This doesn't feel quite right, and of course, this is core. There's no way I'm going to say, just do it, man. We don't have time. So I paused and I'm talking to him and Georgie, the lead actress, and we're working it out. And it's funny because Callum, the DP's in the room being mate, we got to go. And Zach, the assistant director, is we don't have time for this. And again, as the director, I just had to be we have to have time for this because there's no point shooting this if it's not going to be real. You know what I mean? I can't shoot anything that's not genuine and real. There's no point of just getting a scene, So we spent probably 20 minutes or something on a shoot day working this out, which was really not ideal, but absolutely worth it because the scene was really nice how it ended up being. But yeah, we tried to do that in our rehearsals mostly. Again, we can talk more about that later as well. But anyway, so yeah, throughout this writing process, I learned at least the method that works for me, I think, in how to write. So I think now that I've done it, I could definitely write a script much faster. It wouldn't take me 4 years, but I hope. But you know what I mean? It's like anything, when you're new to it, you're going to explore all kinds of alleyways that lead nowhere, probably, and then you find what works for you. And then I think the final part on my writing journey was, I can't remember what I was. I don't remember exactly how I came to this idea, but the idea occurred to me that there's this YouTube channel called The Closer Look by Henry Bosley, and where he does like film essays, or video essays about films, and they're really thoughtful and well done and thought provoking. And I think the first video, one of the first I saw of his, it's called How to Make the Audience Cry, and he spoke about 3 films that made him cry. It's incredible. I highly recommend it. But I guess what interested me in that is like, it's basically saying how to evoke emotion from the viewer, you know? And again, in a technical way. So like learning, even though it's an art form, like what are some skills that can be incorporated to like elicit that outcome? So I found that fascinating. And I watched this like probably in 2015 or something like that. So way before I was making this film. And I think I'd subscribed to him, and I just watch, as he posts a new thing, I just watch it. But then for some reason, well, whatever, I hadn't thought about this, but the idea came to me like, why don't I get him to critique the script? And that was one of those ideas that I was instantly excited about. Like, that would be amazing. So then I'm like, why not? So I joined his Patreon, and I should say, before all of this, like when the script was in a decent place, I did send it back to Wong Fu to see if they'd make it, and I just never heard back from them. So, which is fair enough. I just assumed, okay, fair enough. Like, and at that point, I accepted all right, I'm gonna have to make this myself. Okay, so anyway, yeah, I'll get to that in a bit. So I'm jumping around a bit, but anyway, I realized for The Closer Look, I could join the top tier of his Patreon included a 20-minute Skype call with Henry, and I thought that's perfect. That I can talk to him, and I love that. Like, you can talk to almost anyone you want in this world. Like sometimes you need to be creative if they're a high profile person, but it's possible. I don't think anyone should think, oh, it's impossible. It's also so exciting to think you can talk to anyone you want. I think you need to be prepared. Certainly, I wouldn't want to talk to Musk and be like, hey man, like, I feel like a wasted opportunity. I also would want to have something of value to contribute. Anyway, but I love that. I think that's one really exciting aspect of the world. Yeah. And yeah, so I joined his top Patreon, and I sent him a message saying, hey man, instead of the 20-minute Skype, can you just read my script and just give me some feedback? And he was like, yeah, no problems. So that was incredible. I sent him the script, and he's quite promptly sent me back his assessment. And this is where I would say, like, me at first, how I went to that home and away writer, which was good, certainly, and especially at the point I was at with that, was really helpful. But his feedback was incredible. Like, he had all those little points about little things, which I was like, yep, you're right about that. And then he also had, I think it was like 3 big picture critiques, and they were huge in the sense that I'd read them and I thought, I had to think about it, and then over like the course of a few days, I thought, yep, he's right about that. And like, there's a big change I need to make somewhere to make that, like, I think he was along the lines of the female protagonist's journey. I don't understand how it goes from here to here. Like, what's the reasoning on that? So something really fundamental, and it was great because it was uncomfortable in the sense when you realize, oh my gosh, that's like significant. How am I going to do that? Mm-hmm. But then to take the time and address that, it's clearly a much better piece as a result of that. So that was incredible. And so I spent a little while applying all of his comments. Obviously, if I don't agree with something, I won't do it. But a lot of I like the way he thinks. So a lot of the stuff I was like, yep. I agree with that. And then after addressing all that, and now I'm at a point where I'm like, I think this script is very good. Like, I think it's ready. I went back to him to say, hey man, like, do you mind if we do that one more time? Where now I've applied your advice, you have a look and tell me what you think. And then he came back and said, actually, no, I don't want to. I think anytime you get the second round feedback from someone, it's much less impactful than the first time.
Oh.
Yeah, it was interesting because I was like, damn it. But I also respect that. Like,
Yeah.
you know, yeah. And so he had some very valid reasons, you know, and then I think I accepted it. I respected it, even though
Makes sense.
it wasn't quite what I wanted to hear at the time, you know. Yeah. But I think I asked him, like, do you mind if we have like a quick Skype call? You know, I just wanted to chat with you quickly. And again, he graciously allowed me to do that. And I had this call with him. And in that call, it was awesome to just talk to this guy I really respect, you know, like my favorite film critic. It was amazing to just chat with him. Yeah, in that call, you know, because I think he could see like this guy's obsessing over this and like he's trying to make it perfect. He said, I think I'm paraphrasing, but I think there's been a study where they look at one writer or producer or director who's like spent a ton of time really obsessed over one project and then produced that, compared to others that spend a bit of time, you know, they make it as best they can, they create it, they produce it, they move on to the next thing, and they produce more overall films, say, or screenplays. And the guy that produces more is in the end more proficient. He's better at doing that. He creates, you know, more impactful pieces. And yeah, so he was saying, you know, like, it's good where it's at. You've got a good story. He literally said that. You got a solid story here. I think you should go make it. And that was awesome to hear from someone that I really respect. And it was. I think it was necessary like surge of, like a push almost, where I thought he's right. Like, you know, I could spend forever trying to perfect this thing, but you'll never feel ready. You know, you'll never feel perfect. So I've just got to go and create this now.
Yep.
Do you feel the same with your academic papers, or do you feel like they're perfect?
What do you mean in terms of just
like,
getting them out there?
When you think it's time to publish, do you feel like, yep, this is perfect? Or do you have a bit of a sense of, oh, I could maybe refine that or make this a little better, but let's just get it out there?
I think it's interesting because right now I think I'm working on a paper that is like, that I feel is very close to my heart, and it's like important. So I'm probably spending more time on it than I need to, but the interesting thing about that is that the paper before it, I feel like we were like, let's just get it out there, because the other thing about papers is that, you know, you're not going to get published. Like, novelty is a huge knob in this whole thing. And the novelty knob is turned all the way up for scientific papers. Like, if somebody else has done it and it's not novel, then it's very difficult to get published. So there is kind of a pressure to get things out there quite quickly. On the other hand, it is going to be reviewed by your peers and, you know, an anonymous group of scientists that have expertise in the area. So it has to reach a certain standard. So quite interestingly, like you stratify papers in terms of what's called the impact factor, where high impact factor journals are harder to get into. There's basically a larger barrier to entry. So you can kind of push out kind of low to mid-tier journals quickly, or you can maybe spend a little bit more time and go for a high impact journal. Now I'm trying to go into a high impact journal now, and I don't think anybody in our research group has been able to achieve that before. So it's unprecedented ground. And so that's a little bit difficult in the same way that it's difficult for you to figure out, to be like, well, I don't even really know who to ask or where to go to and how to ask advice. And so I'm putting a lot of work into this paper, just because I feel that I'm going to feel better about that than the previous paper, where we were just like, look, it's good enough, let's go for mid-tier, and we did get it published in a mid-tier journal. So, yeah. But to answer your question, I feel that we kind of already have an idea of what is going to be accepted by these journals, especially mid-tier journal, where the vast majority of our papers will go to mid-tier journals, and so we kind of already know before we write the paper just with the data that we have and the idea that we have, if it's going to be accepted eventually. Like, you kind of get in a groove of like what's going to be accepted by the reviewers. So yeah, I think so you get a sense of that, and then I think it becomes quite clear that you're just like, it becomes pretty clear when you're screwing around and just doing too many little things,
like tweaking and whereas clearly pretty good and ready. And there, it's good to have a good mentor. Like, I have a good mentor, and he's very clear on, look, this is good enough, let's get it out there. Nice. Henry was that mentor for me.
Yeah,
man. So that's basically the story of writing it, because at that point I then I think I was like, all right, I'm going to give myself a week to make any little final changes, and then I'm just going to create this thing, you know. And the interesting thing is, during the whole production process, I tweaked the script, you know, because the actors would have great ideas. A scene wouldn't quite work for them, so we'd work on it. And so through the whole production process, we still changed it, you know, which it almost shows you, like, if I wasted time just sitting there writing it, what's the point when maybe we'll, you know, I think it's good to be open to changing it a little bit more when we're in the moment and we realize things, you know. So, and of course, now that I've been through the whole thing, it's like I have such a better idea of everything now than I did going into it. So yeah, it just puts me in a better position to do it going forward, if you know what I mean, like anything.
So you said it took about 3 or 4 years to write the script?
That's right. I'm going to check. I've got the date of the the encounter with Phil. It was August 2019.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
Yeah. Oh, and so not that long, because we started shooting in I started working on production at the start of 2023.
Okay.
So that's
4 years, right?
Yeah, half of 2019, 2020, 21, 22. Yeah, 3.5 years.
3.5 years.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't think that's a long time?
No, I do, but it's not 4 years.
And you said
it's a very long time. Yeah.
You said offhandedly that it's not going to take that long the next time around. So you're planning on writing another script?
Mate, that's a good question. I don't know yet. A lot of the things I don't do with like a plan, if you know what I mean.
Okay.
In the sense that I just want to focus on what I'm doing now, complete that.
I totally understand.
Yeah, and then we'll see where things are at, because
I love it.
Yeah, I have no idea, right? Like, will the film be well received? How will I feel after it's all done? You know, there's still plenty of things to learn in the post-production process.
Yeah.
So I want to experience all that, be focused on all that, and then see where I'm.
I love it.
Yeah, cool. Yeah.
Great answer.
Yeah. I was going to say, I feel like it's likely, though, because I've immensely enjoyed a lot of these aspects. So I can't see myself doing this and then being like, that's it, you know, no more of that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I don't know to what degree in that.
That's exciting.
I'll worry about it later. Yeah.
That's exciting, man. You know, one of the things that jumps out to me about your story is that it's funny how, like, when you just decide something needs to be done, you find the resources, right? Like for instance, when you decided that you were going to meet Phil and you didn't have a script, and then you were like, well, I'm going to meet this guy soon, I probably should write a scene. And then even though you've never written a scene came out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you just decided, okay, I'm going to give myself a week.
Yeah.
You know, and then it just comes out. Isn't it amazing?
Yeah.
It's the power of like deadlines.
Yeah.
It very much focuses the mind.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I agree. I think that's also, I was thinking about this morning, actually. The beauty of like working with someone else, not just being solo. Something about that makes it easier for me to like not procrastinate and not
yeah, definitely.
You know what I mean? When there's someone there, I don't want to waste their time. I'm okay to waste my time. You know what I mean?
I totally get it.
But because I've noticed whenever I was collaborating with people, it would be very easy to have a productive, you know, if I'm meeting with Callum, the director of photography, and we're talking about the shot list, we could go for hours productively. Whereas if I was sitting there by myself, it might be hard for me to just come up with shot ideas and things like that. You need to be prepared. You can't just walk into that. But yeah, so that's been maybe another learning for me, because when you're writing, you're just most of the time sitting there solo, and so it's
maybe that's why it took 3.5 years.
No, I think it's just, again, like learning how this process works. Do you know what I mean? Like, what's the structure? What's the formatting? Okay, now that I've done it, like, what makes writing good? All these who do I talk to about this? All these things take time. Like I didn't just find that home and away person. I had to like research a lot. Whereas now, maybe Henry's gonna be my go-to guy, if he's open to that. Like, what do you think about this, mate? And I've got a bit of a network in a lot of ways now.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Beautiful, man. So then when it came time, so okay, let's so we've got the writing now. What happens next? So you've got something where a couple of mentors that you really respect and admire have said, go ahead and shoot the film.
Yeah.
So then what do you do next when you decide that you're going to shoot the film?
Yeah, cool. So I think at the end of 2022, I think I set the goal of create this film in 2023. Like, that was one of my goals. I have some annual goals, and that was one of them. And so, well, like everything around this film, I was like, all right, how do I do that?
Nice.
Like, now I know how to write and make a script, but how do you produce something? And again, I didn't know anything really. Like, I didn't really know what a producer did. I didn't really maybe know exactly what a director did. I didn't know. I did, just like production designer, sound recordist, assistant director. Like all these important roles in film. I didn't really know exactly what those people do, who is essential, who can be, who can cover for 2 positions because we don't have the budget to have like a massive team. So I think, again, it was really hard, and I just had to jump into it. I think that's kind of the way I approached it. Oh, right, actually, no. The first thing that happened was, it was in like 2022. I feel like halfway through that, I sent the script. There was this production company, and even then I didn't really know what a production company was, but this production company, I joined a few Facebook groups of like Australian film, because then they were all posting film related things, I'm making this film, I need a gaffer, or can anyone help me in how do I write this or whatever. So definitely the kind of space I was looking for. And I saw there was a production company that posted, please, like, it was like they're having a competition, please submit your scripts and we'll choose one and we'll provide you with a director of photography, all the gear, and we'll help bring your vision to life. So I was like, that's pretty cool, may as well do that. So I submitted my script to that, and they very quickly got back to me saying they wanted to make it, which was really cool and exciting. But because it was like mid 2022, or maybe even the start of 2022, I'd still had to talk to, I hadn't yet like had the idea about Henry and finalize the script. So because I also didn't expect they would, I thought I'd fail because that seemed more likely. So they almost like they were ready before I was, and so I was like, all right, well, I better tweak this thing and get it right before we do it. And so then maybe like 6 months later, finally I was like, the script is good, sweet. So it was actually really handy, because then I had this, turns out he was a director of photography with a production company, so he had all the camera gear, and he knew more than I did about like being a DP and producing content. So I just said to him, all right, man, like, what do we need to make this happen, and so he gave me like you need a producer, you need an assistant director, you need a production designer, you need a makeup artist. He gave me the skeleton crew that you need at minimum to make a film. And I think I'm a pretty logical, structured person, so I just wrote a list. What are all the things I need? All the positions for the crew I need. What are all the cast members I need? And it's funny because I wasn't getting these people because I knew what was going on. It was just, I've been told that I need these people. Yep. So I better get these people, So I put like the ads out online looking for a producer for this film. And at first I was even looking for a director. Because I was tossing up the idea in my head, do I want to act in this thing and be like the lead actor, and then have a different experienced director, and maybe I like co-direct with them or whatever. I was trying to be really open-minded. In the end, I directed it and didn't had a lead actor, and I'm glad I did that. I think that was definitely the right choice. It would be very hard to let anyone else direct it. Now that I'm just very glad I made that choice. It's so obvious to me now, but back then I really didn't know anything, you know.
Okay.
Anyway, so then people would apply, and again, it's all new to me because I'm like, I don't know, like, is this person good for this? Like, I got no idea, you know. I don't even know what to look for. But again, going back to that point I made before, what I found very exciting and cool was a lot of skills I've developed in business about I've run some job interviews before for positions, and also like with real estate tenants and that, vetting the tenant to make sure they're going to take good care of the property. It's completely separate, but it's at the same time like that skill of assessing someone quite quickly and then determining if they're appropriate for whatever it is. It was directly applicable here. Mm-hmm. So that was it was like a nice, that's cool, you know. Even though I don't know anything about what a producer does, I at least know how to vet you a little bit. You know what I mean? Yeah. I've had experience doing that. Yeah, so I started assembling the team, and now it was very tricky because it was this odd thing of me trying to cast a position, but I'm like, I don't really know if you're good, you know. I don't know if what you're saying is impressive or if you're BSing me. You know what I mean? I don't know if you really care about this thing. I didn't know what to look for, so in the end, I just went with, well, how do I feel about this person?
Yep.
You know,
right.
What feeling do they give me?
Yep.
And and even I was figuring that out. But it was pretty cool when I had the feeling of like, yeah, I'm excited about this person. I think they're the right one. It was always correct. Like, they were always a pleasure to work with, and I was so happy to have them. Yeah. But it was a bit of a learning thing. Sometimes I would cast someone not having that feeling. Sometimes because I'm like, well, I just want to. We're gonna make this thing happen. I can't keep waiting to find that person, you know. Or even if it was like really early on and I just didn't know what to look for, and I was just trying that and trusting certain things. But yeah, so I eventually assembled the team. And I guess like I was also executive producer. So like, which to me was like managing everything as well, making sure that everyone was doing their role and just overseeing everything, because ultimately no one's going to care as much about the thing as I do. And whilst I want to trust everyone's doing their thing and leaving it to them, some things I should definitely keep an eye over and make sure that it's, you know, done to the standard that I want. So then I spent I think that took about 3 months of searching for different positions, prioritizing like the most senior ones, and then, you know, working through everything. Had some auditions for the acting roles, which was really fun. That was also challenging in its own way because, you know, I got so many applicants for actors, and
where did you promote? How is it that you got such a great response
for actors?
Yeah.
Okay. I put that on a website called Star Now, and it was just a talent website in Australia. Pretty sure they do worldwide. And then also all those Facebook groups that I was part of, I just would post in there about looking for actors. So there were so many, and that, again, because it was my first time doing that, it was hard because I'm like, well, how do I even know who the right actor is? But I quickly figured, like, I just had to feel something from this person. Like, in their default videos, do I believe them, you know? It was very clear to me when I did believe, and, you know.
And what did you, so when you auditioned them, they sent in a video?
At first it was like, if they applied, I could see, like, they would normally either send me a reel. It's called a reel, which is like a video compilation of a few of their different either films they've been in, or if they're more new to it, maybe just videos of them like doing auditions to a camera. You know what I mean? Or if it's like a film school, maybe they're just doing a scene audition. Yeah. So you'd see like their default generic videos, and then if I was intrigued, then I would send them 2 scenes. One of the scenes was a fun, light-hearted scene, and one was like an intense scene, like emotional scene, because I wanted to see like their range and how they handled each one. And then they would film themselves doing that scene or those 2 scenes, and then send that back to me. Yeah. And then I just watched the videos, and it's funny. As soon as I saw the right people, I was like excited, and again, like, yes, that's it.
Nice.
Yeah. And even that, like, there's a bit more to it, I guess. Like, I could tell like these guys are great, but then I also thought, will they commit to this to the degree they need to? You know, because like there was one example of a girl who she seemed quite skilled and everything, but the way she was replying and like the reply times and what she was willing to do, even just for the audition, they didn't give me confidence that she would you know, go the extra mile when we need to. So I'm very glad I didn't like pursue that, because instead the people we got like went above and beyond, you know, like preparation wise and like staying back wise and all these little like asks that maybe someone else wouldn't have done. So that was really fun having the first audition. The film does have some gymnastics in it, and because I knew that would be a new frontier for most people, I had the first audition in a gymnastics gym just to give them a little bit of exposure to it. So that was cool, and it was very exciting, man, to see. The first time I saw like an actor run a scene, I was like, this idea in my head, it's now that's like sick. Kind of real. Yeah, it was very, very cool. And it was cool to see people putting a bit of time into this thing now. Like this pure idea I had, now real people are spending a bit of real time making that, you know. It was very exciting and very fun. And okay, so after finally having everyone, the cast and crew confirmed, we started shooting in, I think it was April. Do you want me to run you through the whole process? Okay. In April, and we shot like one day, I think it was around the end of April, and it was great. Again, it was completely new. I also wasn't saying to everyone, hey guys, this is my first time, because I feel like that puts almost a negative spin or like reduces expectations. Right. You know what I mean? So I mean, it's not like I was hiding it, but at the same time I wasn't. Yep. You know, you can think whatever you want to think. Anyway, just funny little things, man. So we were shooting out in the Blue Mountains, and we after a bit of like the DP wanted this and that, so I'll change the car. Like I organized to get a Honda S2000 for the lead actor, which is like a convertible Japanese sports car. And I remember driving to the Blue Mountains. I was in a truck because we were going to shoot something with the camera on the back of the truck at some point, or in a ute, I should say. And I remember like driving along those roads at like 5:50 in the morning, you know, and then I spot this S2000 driving, and I was like, yeah, that's the first like person that's going to be in the film, and I can see the car. I was just getting excited about it. It was funny. Then everyone rocks up, and the assistant director gives a little little welcome speech thing, and I gave a little speech as well. That was funny. I knew I wanted to say something, but I didn't really know how to say it. You know what I mean? Hopefully whatever I said like made a bit of an impact, but you know. Then we started for that day, and again, because I'd never done any of this before ever, you know, it was I learned very quickly. Like I remember the first take, they're like sound speeding, camera set, all set, and then I'm just standing there, and then the assistant director's like, "You gotta say action." I was like, "Oh, action!" So, yeah, it was hilarious. Anyway, so yeah, it was good. It's a pretty good first day. I think it was beautiful out in the Blue Mountains. I think everyone had a pretty good time. I think it went pretty smoothly, actually, especially for my first time ever. And from there it was, I learned so much in that first day. All right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, I'll have this ready for the next day. This could have been smoother, so I want to make sure that I pass that on, all that kind of thing. Like tiny things. For example, one of the scenes was meant to be the morning after something had happened, and I hadn't told the makeup artist that. So then afterwards I was thinking like, oh man, like was the makeup like a bit off, because it should be just so subtly to show that it's the next morning, you know what I mean? So I just made like tiny little things like that, writing notes about make sure the makeup artists are aware of what's going on, because they were great in just doing what needed to be done, but I could have given them a clearer direction as to exactly what for each scene. Anyway, just little things like that, which I think we got most of it pretty damn good, but there were just small things that I was like, oh yeah, I can be better next time. Anyway, and I think it was about a month later we shot another 2 days, and that's a long time, a month between shoot days. And the reason was mostly the director of photography, his availability. He could offer us like 1 day a month, basically. So that was quite difficult because it's just a long time. Like I've learned now, like I definitely think I would want to just, like most films do, a intense condensed block of shooting, in a row if possible, or maybe on weekends, Interestingly, Chris Nolan, on one of his first features following, I hear that they shot that across weekends over the course of a year. So it's massive respect, and it kind of shows you what you have to do as an independent, low budget filmmaker. You have to, when people aren't working, when they've got time, work around that. It's so much more difficult than if you can just have that condensed period. So then we had those two days then, and then a month later we had another day, I think. But yeah, at this point, because that had been like 3 months and we'd shot, say, 3 or 4 days. And then in between there's all kinds of little difficulties, like the assistant director, after our first shoot date, like a family emergency came up and he had to fly to the UK. And so clearly he wasn't going to be able to do his role, which was a massive shame because I was really happy with him, but I totally understood. So had to in a relatively short amount of time recast that position to someone else, and that was one of the ones where I wasn't like stoked. I didn't have that great feeling about the next person, but we also had to shoot in like a few days, so I thought, okay, well, it's better to have someone than no one, but it wasn't that good for that person, and it wasn't that good for us ultimately, and so then we had to recast it again. Anyway, that's just one thing about film is it's crazy, man. Like I think it was is it Guillermo del Toro, No Country for Old Men? Yeah, I think it was him. Some director was saying making a film is like laying the track in front of the train as it's rolling, because it's just things happen and you have to adapt so quickly, and it's not, I mean, it definitely wasn't for me a smooth, perfect, easy ride. Like so often something would throw you off and you have to adapt very quickly or make a decision to keep it on course. I can tell you about like a million things like that happened, but this was one of them, with him having to leave and then having to find someone else. And anyway, but ultimately I was like, well, there's nothing's going to stop this. You know what I mean? We're going to make it. We'll make it work. But yeah, so at that point of like, say 3 or 4 months and only having 3 or 4 shoot days, like it was getting hard for the whole team to be still committed, and like I guess like keeping their mind focused on this thing as they're doing other work too. Hard for the actors as well, perhaps. You know, and having to consistently keep their hair at the same length and all these kind of things. So it was just hard for everyone, and I could sense a bit of that with like morale dropping a little bit. So and it was becoming evident. Like the lead actress was telling me, you know, I'm going into a feature on this date, so we've got to be finished before then, okay? And I was like, thank you for telling me that. I'll do everything I can to make that happen. So then it was hard. I had to then start pushing the director of photography a little bit, saying like, all right, well, this is our deadline now. So like, what days can we do? We need probably 5 more days, say. Which days can you give us before that date? And it was difficult. Like it wasn't easy. He didn't just be like, oh yeah, here's those 5. He would be like, oh, I can do that and that and that, which is 3. And I'm like, okay, well, we need 2 more. And oh, don't worry, can't we do this? And I'm like, no, we need the 5, you know. So and it's not just him, that the whole crew that I've got to work it out with. But it was hard, and in the end we came up with a plan that was like, cool, this is going to work. And then the day before the next shoot day, he texted me saying, hey man, I'm feeling a bit under the weather. I hope this isn't like a bad sickness. I'll let you know. And then that night he texted me saying, yeah, I can't shoot tomorrow. I'm just too unwell, which was a huge upsetting disappointment. And so I had to text the whole crew and cast saying, really sorry guys, we can't shoot tomorrow. And that was like 12 hours before, or less than 12 hours before we were going to start. So that was crazy. Not to mention like all the things that were prepared, locations, food, you know, all these things that were just gone now, like wasted, you know, and all the time and preparation and everything. It was I really dislike when people change plans, even like personally. Even if I'm like going on a first date with someone, the stakes are low, but if they without much notice want to change it just really, I don't like that. It really bothers me. Anyway, so this was a pretty extreme version of that, but I also tried to be understanding, you know, like if the guy's really sick, you know, then what can you do? But I like to think I would push through anything, but that's just my nature. I can't expect that of everyone. Anyway, so then that day got cancelled and had to get postponed, and then he said he needed 2 weeks to recover, and the next shoot day was like less than 2 weeks after that one, so that one got cancelled, and it became evident to me that we're not going to be able to finish this before the deadline of the actress, you know. And so then I was and it always falls back on me to like figure out how is this going to work, you know what I mean? Again, it's probably like that to all directors, but definitely like low budget ones where it's all on you, you know. So tried to figure out how we could do that, how we could make it work, and it was very upsetting, man. Like it became clear to me like we can't do it with this director of photography. Like he cannot give us enough days before that date, so maybe we can get a different one to finish it off, you know. And then he didn't like that idea, but it was very strange because he didn't like that idea. So I was like, okay, well then what would you like to do? Like, you know, I'm not telling you what we're doing. I'm just trying to put out all the ideas that make this like we get us to the finish line. So that was a bit frustrating because, you know, I thoughtfully gave him like 3 ideas of ways that we could resolve it, and he just said no to all of them with no actual suggestion of what we can do. So that was, these little signs were starting to bother me, where I'm like, mate, you're not even, I don't think you really care about this, and you're not really trying to like resolve this problem, you know. And it's funny as well, like I would do so much work and just not tell people about it because I just don't want to burden people with things they need to worry about, you know. I just want them to stay focused on whatever they're doing. But I'm like, mate, you don't have any idea how much, like, I don't know, you're just not thinking at all about all the stuff, all the work, you know. Anyway. To summarize on that, like, it didn't work out with him. He just wasn't giving us anything useful. And So we had to stop, and then the lead actress was basically off the project because she had to go on her own thing, and it was clear to me that she was not keen to continue, and so that was really depressing, man. Like I'm a pretty optimistic and happy person, but for like 3 days I didn't feel like doing anything at all. So I downloaded a computer game and played that.
Yes.
For the first time in a long time, I just sat there and played a computer game. Not even that long, but just like I'd go train and then I'd just play this game, which was kind of cool and fun. But it was, I was so unmotivated. Because it just felt like all that work is now in jeopardy, you know. And I also felt like it was all falling apart because we lost the lead actress, and then I thought, and the DP, and then I thought, well, I can imagine a lot of the other crew are not going to be wanting to stick around either because this is now dragging out so long, you know. That would have been July, I think, at that point. Yeah, so then my first priority was to find a new director of photography, and that was difficult because I'd be talking to them and I would say, we've shot all this, like, what do you think about that? Can you sort of match that, and then we just shoot the other half, you know?
Yeah.
Well, this was before we lost the lead actress. This was when I was trying to desperately just make it work, and interestingly, like, pretty much every single DP. Well, maybe I'll say everyone that I thought was really genuine, because again, I think there's people out there like, yeah, mate, no worries, I can shoot like that, no problem, and they just don't really care about the thing. But everyone that I felt was genuine was saying, oh, look, this style that you've shot, it's just too different to how I would shoot it, so you can't have that and then my shots. It's going to look completely different, and it's not going to work. So we'd have to reshoot it all, which was, as you can imagine, very depressing. Because of all the work, everything about it, to time, everything. Also to think like everyone has put work into those days, everyone in the crew and cast, and then to say we're not going to use them, I feel really slack doing that, you know. Anyway, but ultimately that's what we had to do because all the DPs were saying that, and it's cool. Callum, the guy, ended up going with. He was like, he said the same thing, you know, like what you've got is too different to how I would do it, so it's not going to work. I'd have to shoot the whole thing again. So then after, you know, looking around and thinking about it, because I really liked Callum's work. He was the guy that gave me instant excitement when I saw his stuff, you know. So after all that, I said to him, look, man, I'm actually willing to just redo it from scratch with you.
This is before you got the new actress or after?
Before. Yeah, I knew we didn't have that one, but this was to me the priority to sort that out first. It was cool because Callum was like, awesome, and he accepted it. And then like 2 days later, he comes back to me and says, mate, are you sure? Like, you've done so much work. Like, you know, I don't know if it's worth it for you to restart again. And I'm like, we have to. So it was nice that he's a very genuine guy. He's awesome. I'm so happy to have had him. Then we made a bit of a plan. But the cool, again, I always want to find the positives. The positives for me were I learnt so much that first time around, you know, like so much, you know, and so I'd gone from like a total noob director to an somewhat experienced one, and I like to think I learned quickly, so I thought I was pretty competent at this point. So that time it was like 2.0, you know. So
you rewrote the script and you reshot the film.
It was just little things, you know.
It's cool, man.
Yeah. Anyway, so, you know, then I was like, all right, we're going to have a production schedule where it's pretty back to back, you know. So and then Callum was clear I can do weekends. Weekdays are harder for me. So we kind of would have like this weekend and the next weekend and the next weekend, that sort of thing, which was really nice because it gave us a bit of a break between. Okay. But it was recent enough that we're all
right. It's not a month.
You know, exactly. Yeah, we're all still in the zone, sort of thing.
Nice.
And I had to recast quite a few positions again, because a lot of people
in the crew.
And the lead actor Lee Long, he stayed on, and I have immense respect for him for that. Like, because I was ready to have this conversation with him. I'd written points about like, man, there's no pressure here. You're awesome, but I know how like frustrating this must be. You've already done so much, and then if that's not going to be used, we have to start again. You know, and I had all these like, I wanted to be very clear to him, like, there's no pressure. I don't want to obligate you, but I would love to have you continue with us, you know. So I had all these, I wanted to be thoughtful about how I said it. But the cool thing was, when I call him and tell him the news, he just accepted it immediately and was like, he was obviously like, oh man, can't we just get that to work with that or whatever? And I explained why, and he's like, oh, okay, well then when's the next shoot day? Like, there was no doubt in his mind. I was so thankful. Like, for all the people that were like that committed, it was impressive, you know. Because he's absolutely so committed. Or like, I never felt like I was asking too much of him, and he'd always like just push. Yeah, it's really impressive. And he's a great actor. So like, all these things together make him like, they're all really good traits. So but sadly,
did you notice any differences? I'm curious about, because he did the film again, basically.
Yeah, he was very consistent, man. Which is a good thing, I think, as an actor. When you know like your take on that scene, because you know there's multiple takes and different camera angles. So consistency is important, because if he's doing something different every time, then maybe that's cool. But then when you're cutting between, it might not work. Let me think. I think the only main differences were that, like the chemistry with the different actress, and just working out what worked with her, you know, which might have been subtly different.
That's what I was imagining.
So maybe some dialogue with them, if it didn't quite feel natural, we'd change it a little bit. But no, I'd say he was, I guess his essence was the same, if you know what I mean.
That makes sense.
Yeah, which was great, because he was so good the first time around. I was like, I hope we haven't lost that magic, you know, at all, because you have to do it again. But no, it was great. And then that was it, man. So we just beasted through it for another couple I think we started in September and we finished in December, and there was that month and a half.
Was there any period where you began to reshoot with the new DP, but you still had the other lead actress?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that was timed the same, so
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you already knew that she was going to move on and do another feature before you lost the other DP.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that was immensely difficult.
I can imagine, man. Yeah. Thank God you had that video game.
It was Final Fantasy 7, I think. Yes. Yeah. It was cool. It's a good challenge, that point, man. To feel, I mean, there was no way I wasn't going to do it you know what I mean? I couldn't respect myself at all if I was, it's just not even an option. You know what I mean? To be like, well, I guess we tried. This never would, But it was very difficult, and frustrating in so many ways. And I felt bad for a lot of everyone actually that had contributed. But that's just how it was. So, and I have immense gratitude for anyone all the people that did stick with me for the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't expect it as well, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I totally understand for anyone that couldn't, that's totally fine and understandable. But for anyone that did, that's incredible. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now we're in early stages of post-production. So
then roughly how long did the shoot take?
We did 10 days of shooting.
So 5 weekends?
Not quite. We did a few 3-day blocks. So say a Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Or a Saturday, Sunday, Monday. So it's probably 4 blocks, I would say.
About a month?
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, yeah, the month and a half break in between. Yeah, we did 7 days, then that break, and then 3 final days.
Okay.
Yeah. It was very cool, man. I think for me as well, one of the most difficult but also rewarding aspects of it was working with people.
Yes.
In most of the things I do them all by myself, as much as I can. I think I've naturally tried to do that to almost for reliability and consistency. If I'm not relying on anyone, less things can go wrong or surprise me, you know. But it's impossible with filmmaking. Like you need the people, you need the team. So it was cool because it was different for me. Because at times I'd get so frustrated with like this thing not being done, or this thing not being done how I quite wanted it, or someone doing something in a different way, you know. It was difficult. But thanks to my man Phil with that advice, like treat your team well, that helped give me a lot more, I'd say, patience, and I tried to always be really fun and happy, and that's all good, man, even if it was like I was deeply annoyed, you know. And it's so true though, like I had that epiphany during the filming, like it's never really helpful to be annoyed and be like snarky or whatever, but if instead you're like positive and that's all good, man, let's figure this out, it probably makes it more okay to make a mistake and tell you about it, which is much better than making a mistake and trying to hide it, you know, which then will cause other problems. But then also I think it probably naturally makes people want to do a better job. You know what I mean? Like if I make a mistake and the guy's really nice about it, I'll probably like, damn, I really don't want to make another mistake for this guy. Like, whereas if he like does what you expect and kind of gives you a mouthful, then you might think, well, I don't know, this guy's, you know what I mean? So it was nice, and it made me think I just want to be like that in all my interactions. And it's a fine balance, because it's not being disingenuous, it's just you know what I mean. And I think probably the underlying thought as well is like, look, these guys are all here to make the film and help you, so like if they make a mistake, even if it seems like obvious and careless, like that's maybe to me, but maybe to them it's something else, and like let's just keep in mind that we're all here to make this thing succeed. So, you know, there's no need to get annoyed, and you know what I mean, and keep and I hope people enjoyed that. And it's a bit of a skill too. I noticed I got even better and better at it as it went. Like little things would come up which were very annoying, and I'm like, how is this only being told to me now, kind of thing. But then I would be able to very quickly positively think of a solution or a way around it. It's cool.
I remember we also talked about how one of the greatest gifts you can, like one of the best ways that you can treat your team is by making them part of a great film, ultimately, you know. And it just reminds me of like, you know, it seems to me that certain directors have, some of them have a very strong, maybe impetuous. I know, for instance, with Django Unchained, like Fox came in with a certain way of doing it, and he wanted to be like a little bit more Shakespearean and laid back with the character. And I know in the first take, Tarantino was like, what the fuck was that? And just pulled him aside and went, he's a fucking slave. He's not cool. Yeah. And really put it into his head of like, you know, what you did there that needs a lot of work, and wasn't delicate about it. Yeah. And I assume that probably like Scorsese would probably have like he's probably pretty direct, not very delicate style. So I know that's something that we talked about a lot, but you, because of Phil's advice, you decided to go for not saying it was a bad or a good, but just saying, you know, there are obviously different directing styles. Yeah, well, I think the way I treat cast and crew is different as well. Do you know what I mean? Okay. Because from the cast, I'm asking them to be as vulnerable as possible.
So
Right.
in turn, I'm as vulnerable as possible as I can be to them.
Oh, that makes sense.
But if I'm dealing with a assistant director, it's a very different role.
I see.
Where I will be, where we're talking logistics, and you know what I mean. Being direct is probably a good thing in that case. I mean, there's no need to dance around things. It's just like, how long is that going to take, or you know, can we schedule this with that, or you've only got 10 minutes, whatever.
Okay.
But with the actors, I would treat them very differently.
Right.
And it depends on and again, that was like a learning thing, but with the DP, what we're talking about is again very different. So it depends a little bit on their personality, but then also on their role. But I think that for me, the way I took Phil's advice was team, as in, it includes cast, of course, but like treating them well is being friendly in that at all times, I guess. But then,
okay.
Yeah, it's a tricky balance for me as well with the actors, because I didn't want to be so friendly with them that I'm like interrupting if they're preparing for a scene. I don't know if they want to just, like, if one of them was sitting on the couch looking focused, I wouldn't want to walk up and chat in case maybe they were thinking about the upcoming scene, right? Or maybe they're there and like, yeah, you can chat with me, that's all good. I learned a lot later to be like, just the permission thing, like, hey, would you like for me to just leave you be for now and like to get you in the space, or are you cool to have a little chat? You don't, you know, which is I think the way to go about it, because then you can genuinely know how they like to operate, because everyone's different.
So you decided your directing style would be kind of catered to the person that you were talking to.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Yeah, a bit of their personality and a bit of their role as well. You know what I mean? Yeah.
I see.
But yeah, I think Tarantino, by the sounds of it, I can imagine he's very strongly...
Sounds like it. And no, but the thing about that is that people really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Or at least the people that are attracted to working with Tarantino really appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I see that there are some directors who tend to be quite direct, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I imagine James Cameron's the same.
I imagine too.
Yeah.
And I imagine that it's appreciated.
Yeah.
It's like being a stern father. Like my boss is a good example of this, where he's very loving and supportive, but he will push you to your potential. And in the long run, you really appreciate it, because you'd rather be excellent than comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I agree. It's funny. I think maybe something I'm still working at the moment is I really appreciate everyone's individual ideas, and like, because the filmmaking is collaborative,
right? And
everyone had great in their domain, and others, but mostly obviously they're focused on their domain. So many ideas that I'm like, that's brilliant, let's do that, you know. So whether that was like the DP with camera angle ideas and that, maybe it's the production designer with like certain costume or things to include in the scene prop wise, or with the actors maybe like changing a line, or just any little changes that feel more natural to them. A lot of the time I would embrace it. Sometimes I'm specific, it has to be like that, but a lot of the time I'd embrace that. And for me with like the actors, that was never telling them blatantly it has to go from here to here and you do this. It was always like, well, how do you feel about that? Let me see what that is like. And then only if when I was watching it, did it somehow miss the mark, then I would try and give indirect, and this comes from Directing Actors, which is a book I would certainly recommend directors read, because I think it's got interesting ideas. One thing Judith talks about in the book is how with actors, to be like fully in the moment and living the part, they need to be able to just be in the moment and feel and not assess themselves.
Okay.
And that's why it is so important that you're the one doing that as the director. Yeah. So you're watching them, and after the scene you can tell them any things to note or any like ideas. But if they don't trust you, then they have to judge themselves. You know what I mean? And hence they can't be fully present in the moment. I think there's a fine balance of if they do a take, you don't say that was wrong. that's the last thing you want to do, because then they'll feel like they need to artificially change and hence think about things artificially. But it's more of like, that was great. Now I want to try something a bit different. Maybe it's not going to work, but what if? And then giving like some other kind of idea.
Okay.
I'd say it's still direct, in a way, but maybe it's like just tactful in how you're delivering that idea, Yeah, because I think, again, especially for my film, because it's romance drama. I mean, all films, I would say, you want to be vulnerable in whatever it is, but we wanted to cultivate that space of being okay, feeling safe and comfortable. And so I feel like if I was super direct and intense, it might stifle that, I guess like something I could try later, but it seemed to work quite well to, and I would like to ask open-ended questions, like one example, and you got to be very creative with it, but like if something is not quite feeling how I want it to be, if maybe pulling the actor aside and saying, is this the first time he's done this? And then just letting them think about that, not giving them an answer. They don't even have to answer me. And again, this is all from directing actors, but often asking those questions that kind of maybe gets them in the right mind space, more so than ever saying like, say it like this could ever do. Do you know what I mean? Because then it's becoming a bit artificial and like,
Yeah, it reminds me of, I think, so Gary Oldman talked about how in Batman, Christopher Nolan didn't really give him much direction at all. Eventually how one of the pieces of direction he gave was something like, there's more at stake here. And I think that that's a really nice piece of direction, because it's like, here's what I need from you. Turn the volume up a little bit on the emotions. I trust that you have the tools to get there. He didn't tell him how to do it.
Yeah.
He just said very briefly in one sentence that this is what I need from you.
Yeah.
So masterful, man.
Yeah. That's a skill for sure.
Yeah.
And I think part of it is in the rehearsal, all getting on the same page and then trusting them. Because I feel like that did so much of the work for me, where we did that, then when we come in to shoot, like they already know what we're doing, and we'd often just do a take and I'm like, that was great, like. So
can I ask, was there a block of rehearsal where you did the whole film, or did you rehearse the scene just before you did the scene?
No, definitely not. So yeah, I think we just met up once.
You did one rehearsal?
Yeah, with both actors. We just sat down with the script and went through it, and like we're just reading through it. They'd do their lines, and I would do any scene description, or if there was another character that wasn't one of them. And then I think we kind of just went through a scene, and then at the end of the scene, if anyone had any questions or comments, they could just talk about that, and then we go to the next one and so on. And so that way we'd go through a scene, and then maybe Lachlan would be like, yeah, I don't know about this, man, like I don't think I'd actually say that, or why would I do that, and it was cool because sometimes they'd both feel the same, Georgie and Lachlan, and then we'd like work that out. Sometimes it was a matter of me explaining more subtext, because I think it's also harder if you're reading the script to like, why did that happen? But if you're watching the film and it's done well, you can see in like a look or in the music or something, you'll understand why that's happening. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Anyway, so we'd do that, and sometimes I would give subtext and they would be like, oh, nice.
Okay, well.
Sometimes they'd be like, okay, well maybe we should like make that a bit clearer back there, in which case I'd be like, yep, that's a good point. Cool. Or sometimes it'd be like, yeah, like, no, I think you guys are right. Like, how do you think we could do that? And then, then we would just work on it. I think in that one we had quite a few ideas of like, oh, what if we did that? How about this? Like one example was back with Delia, the first lead female, the first time round. She was like, I'd love to have like a little necklace or something that makes me think of the character. And I'm like, that's awesome. Like, let's do that. So we got a specific necklace just for her. And then we were going to incorporate it into a scene where she was like holding it. Didn't really happen because of all the changes that ended up happening, but we actually tied it in a different way in another scene.
Cool.
But that was a really cool little idea. And so for some of those ones in that run through, some of them were things where I had to like write it down, have a think about it, and then come back with a modification. And I think there were maybe, let's say, 4 or 5 scenes where we met up later again, and we did the scene. We like went as if we were shooting it. I shot it on my phone, and then we tweaked the dialogue because it just wasn't quite there. And that was basically the extent of the rehearsals. And I've heard a lot of directors say this, and I totally understand it now that I've been through it. I don't think it's a good idea to try to do a scene perfectly before you're shooting, because there's like originality and energy in the first time you're doing it. Like if a lot of them say like, oh, that was magic, like we should have been filming that. And I felt that as well, even in our rehearsal where we were doing the improv tweaking of the dialogue. I was like, that was incredible. If you guys did it like that on the day, that's perfect. And then on the day it was different. So part of me was like, damn, but that was necessary to get the dialogue to where we wanted it to be, so it's funny like that. I don't think, I think the rehearsal is all in like knowing your lines, understanding the characters, understanding how things flow, being prepared, and then having that bit of spontaneity when you're shooting it to make it real,
Okay.
Yeah.
And then on a day of shooting, how do you brief the cast and crew on that day? What do you tell them?
I don't really tell them anything.
Yeah, that's
it's more. Well, okay. You have a call sheet, so the day before, a sheet gets sent to everyone with all the scenes we're doing, the timings and locations.
Okay.
But even then, like normally before that, they'll have a rough idea of. Definitely the actors. I wouldn't want to spring that on them. Like I'll give them at least a week's heads up. Like we're going to do these scenes.
Okay.
But again, we've already rehearsed everything, so I feel like I could tell them anything and they'll be ready for it. Okay. But I just feel like it's a nice thing to they can at least mentally prepare.
Yep.
Okay, this weekend I'm doing those ones. And then as much notice as we can, we tell the crew like it's going to be this location. We're going to be shooting these hours. Don't know what scenes yet, maybe not 100% on the scenes. The call sheet runs through all of that. Then normally on the day it's the assistant director. He just does a safety briefing, and I would ask him like on the days where we have heaps to get through to just kind of at the start say, okay guys, it's gonna be a big day, we're getting a lot of scenes done, so like let's power through. Does that answer your question on that one? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So then, so you're done with the shoot, and now what are you working on? You're editing the film.
Yeah, that's right. I've edited about 80% of it because I edited everything that we shot. Oh yeah,
you were doing it as you were going as well.
Before that month. Oh, during that month and a half break.
Right.
So not a huge amount to edit now.
Cool.
But I do feel like maybe the small little transitions might take a bit of time to dial in. I don't know, but from one scene to the next.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, got to figure out that. So not too bad. It's just man, I put off so much work and commitments during the filming block.
Yeah.
And since we've finished, well, it's been Christmas and New Year's and everything, but it's been annoying how much I've just been getting through all that work, and I'm still not through it all. And so I haven't been editing for like the last few days, and yeah, I'm just trying to get on top of everything so I can then at least every day edit it. Although I feel like that's discipline. I could just put an hour aside and no matter what, do it. But I think I let a few things get so out of hand that I've got to give them their focus right now before I do that. Yeah.
Nice, man. And then what happens? So let's say that you have a fully finished film that you're happy with. What happens?
That's a good question. The goal is to pitch it to Netflix and like platforms like that, which I hear is very difficult, and you need like to know someone with a connection. So I'll just explore what options we have there. I haven't really thought too much about it, which is probably silly, but I'm just trying to do one thing at a time. The other option is like short film festival, or it might even be a short film, so film festivals. I probably should start looking into that now, but yeah, we'll see. There's no reason I shouldn't, actually. I should just start doing that. But yeah, I guess I haven't even decided yet, but it seems like one of those options. But yeah, I would ultimately love to have it on like on Netflix, for example, because I just feel like the most people would get exposed to it that way, which is ultimately the goal, like to make this piece of art and then for as many people as possible to see it. So I mean, actually the easiest way to do that would be put on YouTube, but for some, I don't know, there's like what is it, a prestige or whatever of not being so, you know what I mean, like a lot of, you can put out a video of your cat on YouTube, so to like, you know what I mean, and then also of course I guess like in the sense of being smart about monetizing it, like what's the optimal way to do that, because I spent a pretty significant amount of money making it, so it'd be nice to and to make it sustainable, right? If you can figure out a way to earn more than you spent, then the next one will be very easy to make in that respect. I don't think that's going to happen. I really don't expect to make anything on it, but in fact I expect to lose a lot on it, but that's not really the point. But yeah, so Netflix seems like a good balance of good exposure, but then I assume they also compensate you decently, so yeah. Any ideas are welcome, man.
I'll let you know, but I have even less experience.
Put it in a paper.
So I'm wondering, like, because obviously you had a clear idea about something that you needed to express and get out into the world, and it's interesting that you chose filmmaking because you didn't have any well, actually I was going to say you didn't have any experience doing that, but actually you've had immense experience doing that through YouTube. Yeah.
I definitely noticed how much that carried over.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah, it was cool and kind of like the how I mentioned the skill of like interviewing people was the same. A lot of the aspects of like being in front of the camera so much, I know how to talk where you don't use filler words and you end a sentence clearly so that you can cut and, you know, transition smoothly. So I just had a natural understanding of at least basic camera and sound stuff. So it wasn't a big step. With a better camera, say, like I was shooting on a digital SLR for most of my stuff, and here we're using a cinema camera. Like it's so much better and complex, but it's basically the same thing, you know. Well, it is the same thing. So, and same with the sound, like much better microphones and more advanced gear, but I've done it with like a really basic thing. So yeah, it wasn't like the whole directing thing where I'd never done it before. A lot of the areas I had a bit of experience with, that definitely helped me. So just having an awareness of making videos and edit. Oh yeah, I've had tons of editing experience.
Yeah,
that really helped me. Because I just knew how I'd want certain things. You know what I mean? What would maybe adjacent experience to filmmaking?
Right.
It's not, a lot of it was new, but a lot of the aspects of making videos I'd done before.
Reminds me, Ridley Scott and Christopher Nolan spent a huge amount of time making adverts.
Yeah.
Before they became like quote unquote filmmakers.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that those aren't films.
Yeah.
But it's funny because it reminds me about how like Ridley Scott was asked like what was the biggest challenge in making The Martian, and he was like there were none. It's funny just because Ridley's he just plays everything off.
Yeah.
I'm sure to the frustration of every other filmmaker.
Yeah.
But the feeling that I get from him is he did a huge number of ads before, and he really cut his teeth doing that kind of stuff, and had to do things on I'm sure like very tight time frames and on a budget, and you just kind of learn after. It's like you said, you can focus all your time on trying to make one really good thing, or you can make 1,000 okay things.
Yeah.
And eventually what happens is on that 1,000th one, you get very proficient at making whatever you've been trying to make.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it seems that experience for him kind of carried over. And now I'm beginning to see that actually probably your YouTube career has probably transferred over quite nicely.
Yeah.
So then that makes film quite a natural medium.
Yeah. It definitely felt like an evolution of what I'd done. Funny point it seems to connect how that point about being like making many of the things to be more proficient. I think that also ties into the scenes and getting takes, and also I think it was something Spielberg was he did to Matt Damon in an example in Saving Private Ryan, but and I'm sure a lot of filmmakers do it where because you have a finite amount of time. And I noticed there were some times when some takes are great, sweet, happy with that, let's move on. But sometimes it would be like, you said this word, but can you please say that word because that kind of has different connotations or whatever. And then they do it again, and then maybe you're like, now I felt like you're like we're going to be playful here, I want to feel more playful. That felt a bit arrogant, and you guys don't really feel like strangers or whatever, and trying to make it feel right. But at a certain point you have to be like, that's good, like let's move on. Because if you obsess in that scene to get it exactly where you want, then you won't have time to get everything else, which is a bigger problem because you have to get everything. So I feel like it's the same thing there in a sense, where it's like if you obsess too much on the one scene, you won't get everything, and that's clearly not the better outcome is to have a film. And it's similar in that, right? It's just, it feels like the same kind of problem there. Whereas if you obsess about writing the thing perfectly before you ever make it, then you either never will make it or you'll make much less. Yeah.
Like this actually, like that kind of creative process, to my mind, is very contrary to like the way that singers, people who create kind of audio art or whatever. Like for instance, Billie Eilish. I know that they do a lot of stuff and they put out very little.
Yeah.
Like they're incredibly selective with what they put out.
Interesting. Yeah.
And they're like, well, you should hear all the bad ones we've done.
Yeah.
So I wonder. Anyway, there I suppose you have more resources where you can just like do take after take after take.
Yeah.
But with a film, it's like different.
Yeah. Well, that's because with a film, you firstly need the actors, all the crew, like everyone has to be there. The location as well has to all be perfect and ready. So it's very hard to then be like, well, we'll come back tomorrow. Sometimes impossible to do that.
Yeah.
But I guess with music, it's like as long as you got a keyboard and a microphone, you can do it anywhere.
Right.
So it's much less. It's much simpler to set up. Yeah. And you need the consistency with the scene as well. Sometimes, if it's going to match other things. Yeah. It would be lovely if we could do that, but it's just not feasible, man. Yeah.
Cool, man. It's so how are you feeling now? Like you're still in it, so you don't get that relief yet.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like every day that goes by and I don't edit, I get a little bit more short. Like my patience is a bit lower because I feel like I'm not doing the thing I should be doing. Yeah, I feel the same really. it seems to be like a lot of things. When the thing happens, you still feel kind of the same.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. I'm excited though. I do feel like a huge beast of a challenge is behind us now, in that production is done. Yeah. And yeah, I'm excited to just have the time to edit it. I got to get through a bit more work stuff. Like little things. Well, my room and apartment was a complete mess because we were shooting some things in the apartment, and thank you to my housemates for being cool with that. But that's all clean now, and my room's pretty good now. But just little things like that as well. Yeah, but I feel excited. Still so much to do, and like we were just talking, then I probably should be thinking about distribution as well, and how that's going to happen. But yeah, just for me, always just keeping the to-do list helps a lot, and then constantly reflecting on the order of priorities and shifting what's the most important thing to do right now, and making sure I'm doing that. Yeah. Yeah, and it's funny, man, because it's clear to me I should be doing the film, and like, I've got to work and get that stuff done, but I've got to be doing the film as well. But it's funny, when I finally cleared that time up and I sit down to edit, yeah, I have that natural feeling of like, oh, but like, am I really ready right now? Like, I want to be in the perfect mind space for this. It's stupid, like, it's just procrastination, you know what I mean? And then as soon as I start, it's all good. But yeah, just I guess fighting a bit of that as well. And maybe when I really care about something, because I've had this with pretty much any video that I've edited that I was really excited about. I'm like, I want to be in the perfect mind space, which you never are, you know. You just gotta, as soon as you start doing it, then you start to, I find it starts to, I feel like I'd probably make the same video no matter what mind space I was in. Do you know what I mean? Yeah, so just gotta get into it and just get started, basically. Yeah.
Cool, man. Maybe just a couple more questions.
Yep.
What would you tell 2018 Lockie?
Nice. Okay, great question. I'd say follow Phil's advice. Yeah, treat your team very well. And that, yeah. So what I learned deeper on that is like, what that means is tricky, and you need to reflect on that. But that of course means like being polite to them, but also little things like the catering. I noticed that some people are really picky about catering, and because I think like a mistake I made was like, I'm pretty easygoing with food. Like if it's healthy, sweet. Like I don't really care about the flavor. Like nutrition is probably more important than flavor to me. Obviously I like nice tasting food, but yeah, and I'm also, perspective wise, like I don't want to spend tons of money on food. Instead I'd rather get more camera gear and stuff, you know what I mean? Anyway, but that's me, and people are different, so I shouldn't assume that, you know what I mean, I should put effort into the food if everyone else cares about it, which they do. So yeah, maybe figure out what's important to people, so that you can by being good to them is also like trying to make sure you give them, maybe they don't care about food either, sweet, but maybe they really care about something else, and trying to make sure I'm doing that. Anyway, because I think in terms of interpersonalness and that, I think that was all fine, but there might have been smaller things that I could have done better. So anyway, but yeah, number one, take good care of your team. Number two, I would say, with all these kind of things, you got to listen to that inner feeling. So whether it's casting someone in a position, in a team, on the crew, or as the cast, it's just, how do you deeply feel, and do they excite you? And if they excite you, they're the right person. And if they don't, ideally keep looking if you have the time, until you find someone that does that. Yeah,
because the headache of finding a new person is not worth it.
Yeah, and often you're kind of stuck with them if you do cast them. So, and it really does matter, actually. I've heard that from other directors as well, where like one bad fit can really like ruin the morale of the whole team. So it is important. But you've also got the reality of time where, like, I would understand if it's impossible to get it for that particular role. For some reason, we're just really struggling to get that position filled. So just do the best you can rather than not do the thing at all, right? That's not really an option. Probably I would say it's surprising how little money can make a big impact. There were a few little instances of things that I just couldn't get the thing that I needed, so I put a little bit of money into it and instantly got it. It was surprising, and it was cool because it was definitely money well spent in that respect, you know. That could also solve that problem of the excitement with a person. Like, if you can't find a volunteer to do that thing, if you put a little bit of money in, it'll probably really help with that, you know. Another thing I would say is like, try to keep it as concise as possible. Don't let the thing draw out. Because kind of like we were talking about before, deadlines really help get creative things done, and especially when you're working with such a big team, it's so hard to keep it all together over an extended period. It's much easier to, I think, to be like a really intense short burst of this and then we're done. And then maybe a final one would be very aware and listen to yourself deeply about when you're, like, if something is not quite how you like it, like, express that. And sometimes that might be okay where it's at, but sometimes it's not. Because what I found maybe difficult is there's so many decisions that you make as a director every single day, of course the big ones you're going to make the right decision on, but when it gets to a really minor level, I noticed there was one or two things where I was just like, oh well, if they think that's good, then that's okay. And then after I thought, like, no, why did I just let that go? Like, they probably didn't even think about it, you know. If I just said, like, actually, can you do this, they'd probably like, yeah, no worries, and then do you know what I mean? So yeah, it's like, be relentless in what is acceptable and okay, and like not even acceptable and okay, but what is, like, the vision, you know. You got to know when to, like, it doesn't matter, but maybe because it was especially in the early days where, like, maybe we'd do a scene and I would not quite feel something, and because of the time pressure and we have to move on and just be like, okay. And then when I'm sitting there editing, I'm like, damn it, like, I can see exactly what I wanted to change there. I should have just because that it was all a balance for me, learning, like, I don't want to tell the actor, do it like this, that was wrong, but sometimes I do really want them to say this word. For example, for some reason I thought, like, confining them to the script was a bit stifling, but I actually don't think it is. What I think I realized later was there are some times when improv is fine, but I also think it's cool to say, no, you have to say it like that, and you layer in your subtext over the top of that to feel whatever you want to feel, but you got to say that. And it was interesting because I remember there was a point when Lachlan was saying something he just did not feel at all. As in, when I say feel, like, he just wouldn't say it like that himself. But he felt it when he was saying it, and it came off to me how I wanted it to. And I think when he watched it, it was the same for him. But in the moment, it just the words would have felt a bit weird. Just listening to that inner taste. And you got to be very like, deeply, and you know what I mean, because it sometimes is not so clear.
Nice, man. Beautiful. Maybe to finish off on a lighthearted one then,
okay,
can you just tell us about some of your favorite films? What are they, and Why do they stand out?
Okay. I'd say The Count of Monte Cristo. It's just an incredibly, it's an epic story, yeah, and it's about revenge, which I think is a really and injustice, and that leads to revenge, right? In this case, I don't like revenge in general. I don't think it's becoming at all. It's not a good use of energy, but the injustice is very compelling, you know. So I think naturally we're all interested in a story if we sense injustice somewhere in it. We feel like compelled to like change that thing,
right?
You know? And it's just a fantastic story, and like a story of growth, and he learned so much and achieved so much. He's like a self-made man, so it's inspiring to me to think you could do that. Like you could do that, you know. I really like Gatsby.
Baz Luhrmann.
Yeah. It's just incredible cinematography, and everything is beautiful. And I find that story inspiring in ways as well. And his commitment to her is epic, I think. You know, the things that Gatsby does for Daisy, without her maybe even knowing it, but then how it's also very self-destructive in a way. It's interesting to think about. Limitless is a good, yeah. It's the same kind of thing where like the human potential, you know, is inspiring. And then Itaewon Class, like I mentioned before, it's a drama. Again, his character is just fascinating because he lives by his values without compromise, and very few people in the world do that. Like when it's really inconvenient to follow your values, to do it anyway. And again, it's inspiring. I guess I see all these things in these films where I'm like, I would like to be like that, or I'd like to achieve things like that, sort of thing.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, one more. The original Spider-Man from like 2000 or whenever it was.
Yeah.
I rewatched that the other day, and I loved it as a kid, and I loved it as an adult. I haven't watched it in a long time, but the music is so good, you know. The way they there's like the Spider-Man theme, and the way they weave that into different parts of like his Peter Parker, but there's a little hint of it, and then he's becoming Spider-Man. We hear more of it. It's just, yeah. And then the messaging of all that, of like again, I would say it's like you can achieve things, and but you've also want to temper your, you know, like be a good person and use it in the right way. I'm sure there's many others, but they're just the ones that come to mind at the moment.
Beautiful, man. Well, again, congratulations. I know you're still in the midst of it, but congratulations on wrapping. That's amazing. I think regardless of if you're a filmmaker or not, it's really inspiring to just hear how when you want advice for somebody, you find a way of getting to that person. When you find that there's a roadblock in your way, you find a way of overcoming that obstacle. If you're a first-time director, you're a first-time writer, and it's really inspiring to see you manifest. As you said, you had something in your mind, and it's really amazing to see that you've actually been able to achieve it and produce something that's real in the world, and to get a team together. So I've been very inspired to see your journey. There's been lots of ups and lots of downs, but to see you push through all of them has been really inspiring. So
thank you, man.
Yeah,
very much appreciated. Something that Ridley Scott said that echoed in my head throughout so much of the film process, and somehow gave me massive inspiration, was the first requirement to do this job is you've got to have inordinate stamina. If you ain't got stamina, don't do it. Yes.